Save the city or catch your greatest enemy. You can't do both.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
You can't do both, I said.
No, I mean the other thing.
Save the city or catch your greatest enemy?
You think you're my greatest enemy?
Yes! You're obsessed with me!
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are! Who else drives you?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and I like to review the comics here on the channel. Normally, I do it solo, but when we get into these big DC milestone comics, I normally like to bring a guest on, and today I got Dylan from The Real Comic Book Gamer. We're going to talk about Detective Comics 1027, and for the most part, in my opinion, DC's kind of been knocking it out of the park with these anthology comics, especially starting out with Action Comics 1000, Detective Comics 1000. We've had Flash 750, I think Wonder Woman 750. We've had all the 80th anniversary specials, and for the most part, they've all been really high quality. All right, good, Dylan, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that's what we got here.
No, I agree. This book was fairly mediocre. Like, it wasn't even that bad. Like, it's not going to be that fun to rip into because it was just mediocre. There's like a lot of stories that are just meh.
Yeah. Nothing really stands out as being really memorable, and that's unfortunate. But there are a couple stories. We'll kind of get into them. But before we get into the details, I do want to say, if you've been coming to the channel and you like comic books, but you haven't made the leap, today is the day to subscribe to Thinking Critical YouTube. Hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this content. Give us a thumbs down if you don't. Either way, we definitely want to hear your feedback in the comment section. So there's 12 stories in this. We're not going to talk about all of them because it'd be a 30, 40-minute video. We picked out 7 comics. I believe 4 of them that we thought were high quality. 2 of them that we thought were of interest that we wanted to talk about parts of them. 1 that we thought was really, really bad. And the first one I got to talk to, we can't see unfortunately, you can't see the name of it right here, but it is Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky's Many Happy Returns. I was very, very surprised that this is the standout story in this comic book. You've got Batman creators like Scott Snyder, Tom King, James Tynion, Peter Tomasi. You have some venerable DC creators like Marv Wolfman in here. Matt Fraction kind of upstages all of them with this really interesting story where I guess beginning in year 1, Joker starts sending Batman a birthday present every month, not on his birthday. Every month he receives a present, and then all of a sudden, over time, if he doesn't receive a present that month, he starts going crazy because he thinks like Joker's doing something even bigger and worse than he could have imagined. It's pretty fun.
Oh yeah, it's great. Like, I really like this idea, and it's a perfect story for one of these like anniversary style issues. It fits perfectly. Unlike there are some others that are like weird teasers and stuff, this style of story fits perfectly with it. It is cool seeing like all the different things that once a month, every year since like it was like November of year 1. He's been giving Batman a random present, and then on this like 1 month, he hasn't gotten his present yet. So Batman like goes to GCPD. He's like, we got 16 hours, 32 minutes, and 11 seconds left for him to give me my present. It's like, I don't know what it is, but it's going to be something big. And so he's freaking out. And then that final moment between him and Joker, when Joker's like, just say it, Batman's like, give me my present. I loved it. It was such a good moment. Like, this is by far and away the best story in this book.
Yeah, it was Batman is like literally going to shake him to death saying, give me my present. That was definitely the best moment. That was really funny. They definitely executed this well. I'm not a big Matt Fraction fan because I think he does a lot of character deconstruction when he does runs. But obviously on a one-shot like this, there's no opportunity to do that. It feels like he kind of celebrated the relationship between Batman and Joker, which is certainly a big part of the character. And I really enjoyed it. Chip Zdarsky, this is the first time I've seen him illustrate a DC comic. This isn't the best illustrated story in here, but it's definitely pretty damn good. I really liked it all around.
Yeah, I did too. Like, it is so weird that, legendary Batman writer Matt Fraction is the one that has the best story in here. Like, that's just so odd. I didn't even know he had a story in here going into it, and I definitely did not expect to see Chip Zdarsky on art. But yeah, he does a good job. And then this is just, I can't believe Fraction had the best story in this book when you look at all the other talent like Marv Wolfman, Dan Jurgens, Scott Snyder. But he killed it.
It's like when I read Wonder Woman 750, and you got Gail Simone, Greg Rucka, a lot of characters that really worked with Wonder Woman. Vita Ayala has the best story. Go figure.
It's just random. It sometimes happens. Maybe like this could be one of those things like where they had this story sitting in their back pocket the whole time. Like, man, if I ever write Batman, this is what I'm going to do.
All right, so this is one of the stories you want to talk about. It's called Ghost Story, James Tynion with Riley Rossmo on art. And this is like a weird Batman, Boston brand Deadman team up with Robin. This is one of the wackiest stories in here, definitely.
Yeah, it's very wacky. It's James Tynion's story. I liked it. It's not like something that's great or a huge standout, but among these other very mediocre stories, I thought it was fun. We have Deadman coming in and helping them and talking about this guy that's like been capturing ghosts, and he takes over Batman's body a few times, and Batman doesn't really mind it. And they talk about how it's weird how Batman is not afraid of ghosts at all. And we have like a B plot being Batman, well, Bruce Wayne, young Bruce Wayne, talking to his mom about ghosts, and it like sort of explains why he's not afraid of ghosts and like the understanding he has with his mom. I thought it was a fun story. I liked it. The art's very wonky. I can understand if people don't like the art because it's all over the place. Some pages look better than others. It's very like up and down for me. This is definitely not something I would want on like a run of Batman, but for a single story, I don't really mind it. But yeah, I thought it was a fun story and better than most of the mess stories in this book.
Yeah, it stands out. Plus, you've got Boston brand Deadman and inhabiting Bruce's body and showing that he's got circus skills. He's kind of showing off to Robin. It was interesting. There's some fun that we had in this comic for sure. Certain.
There's a good banter between Dick and Deadman, where Deadman's like doing the acrobatics, and he's like, "Don't you know I'm the guy that did the most death-defying stunts?" And then Dick is like, "How'd that work out for you?" And he's like, "Oh, funny."
Yeah, so that one's pretty good. I think James Tynion definitely presented himself well in this one. Another very well-known Batman writer that I thought did pretty good was Scott Snyder and Ivan Reis, as always. In my opinion, there's a couple of issues in here that are very well illustrated. This is my personal favorite as far as just the art overall from Ivan Reis with Joe Prado on inks. It almost feels like Scott Snyder is kind of parodying himself in this one because, it's Jim Gordon, it's Batman. He's kind of talking about their relationship with the Signal, and they have a weird name for when the you-know-what hits the fan and, gargoyles are coming to life and stuff like this. And in this case, he's kind of recounting the time when the sun went out. And it almost felt like Scott Snyder was making fun of himself because every time Scott Snyder writes an event or a comic book, he's got to go bigger than every other comic book writer in the history of the world. We obviously remember in Justice League where he decided to remove the moon. So in this comic book, he took out the sun, and it's basically Jim Gordon recounting, checking in with Batman and seeing if he was going to be able to bring the sun back before the Earth froze.
Yeah, I thought it was a good story. Definitely one of the best in this book, and Ivan Reis kills it as always. My favorite panel is the one with those with the gargoyles where Batman just flying in, just mad out of his mind. That one looks so good, and that was a weird thing with this entire issue was like there was some good art, but I feel like they definitely didn't get like any very well known Batman artists. Like it was weird. They didn't really get in it. Like it's
just
same
Brad
for
Walker.
Yeah,
has been on Detective.
Yeah,
No Capullo.
Yeah, like you think about, you're like, did they get any like big Batman artists? They could have like Jim Lee could have done like a small story or something. They didn't get like any known Batman artists. They're like they got some good artists, but they didn't get like anyone that's like, oh man, these guys really made their mark on Batman.
Or even like Jason Fabok. We obviously know he's doing 3 Jokers right now with Jeff Johns. That would have been probably a good addition.
Yeah, so it was weird. And Ivan Reis isn't exactly a Batman artist, but he does a fantastic job here.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I thought it was a good story overall about essentially Gordon, Batman, the Bat Signal, and then what was it called? The Black Rooster is what they called their bad day.
The Black Rooster, yeah.
Which could be called something else, So, yeah, that was good. Like
that was my choice as the second best kind of story. And the other one you wanted to talk about for good reasons was Grant Morrison's Detective 26, got Chris Burnham on art. This one definitely had a different visual flavor to it. and not so much a Batman story, really.
No, it wasn't, but it was still a fun story. I liked it. It's Detective 26 because Batman appeared in Detective Comics number 27. So it's about this guy that's inspired by the same things that basically the creators of Batman were, Zorro, Sherlock Holmes, and stuff. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna take this time. I'm gonna create my costume and create my identity and what I'm gonna do. And he gets all set up. He scopes out this area where this crime's gonna go down, and he's ready. And then Batman shows up, and it's Detective Comics 27 when he's there at that chemical plant and he kicks that guy, and it's literally the exact events of Detective Comics 27. The guy's like, screw this, Batman stole all his thunder and everything, and it's a fun little story. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. Again, nothing that's worth buying the issue for, but it was a fun story.
Yeah, I like it when they do these kind of historical milestone comics. Maybe they go back to the very first appearance of a character, or in this case, the first appearance of Batman. They kind of twisted a little bit. In this case, obviously, Batman jumps in and upstages Detective 26, who would have been the Silver Ghost, the flagship character for DC Comics if Batman didn't show up.
Yeah, if it weren't for Batman, this guy had it all planned out. I like showing how he was really into it. He's like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be better than all these other detectives. And then Batman shows up. He's like, well, there goes that. And now I also like the idea that there's just some normal guy living in Gotham that would have been another vigilante, but now he's just living somewhere in Gotham doing whatever.
Obviously, he would have been a different kind of hero. He was coming in with Tommy guns and a little different flavor for Gotham. So I think they probably made the right choice.
Probably, but at the same time, Joker wouldn't be still around terrorizing people with the Silver Ghost around.
Absolutely, yeah, you'd be mowing them down like it was a prohibition era, gangsters or something.
Yeah, that would be cool too.
So those are kind of the four stories that we thought were the standouts. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff right in the middle in here. There's a couple of stories that were definitely high quality. There's a couple of low quality, but it's a lot of meh in this comic book. But these are the four that I think that probably stand out the most. Now, there are some comics of note that we need to talk about. Maybe they tie into things that are happening in the future, or there's also one that's just really bad we got to talk about. But the next one is going to be Dan Jurgens' story. This was supposed to be part of, I think, one of the Generation 0, 1, 2, one of those comics that they had solicited. Obviously, Generation 5 is no longer happening. This one's called Generations Fractured. And at the end of it, it says it's kind of leading into DC Future State, which is the event we know that's happening in January, where I think we're going to kind of learn the new direction of DC Comics following Dark Knight's death metal. This is not a comic book story. It's just a clip of a comic book. I was not impressed. And if this is what we can expect from Future State, I'm not reading it. I mean, I'm probably going to read it for the channel, but I would not recommend it because this was really disappointing. Really disappointing.
Incredibly. It's really just an ad for the book. That's all. What you don't want when you're paying, however much this book is $10 or something like that. It's just an ad for another comic, to be continued here. And there's nothing of substance in here that makes you want to there's no big cliffhanger. It's just at the end, Commandy takes him back, just grabs original first appearance Batman. And that's you don't even know what he's grabbing him for. He just takes him. And then you see it's just, there's nothing there. There's literally nothing there. I like seeing Calendar Man, haven't seen him in a while, but that's it. There's nothing.
Yeah. If this was what Generation 5 was going to be about, or at least parts of it, skipping through timelines to see different versions of Batman as everything gets reset. We saw his parents. There's a picture from 1985. When we go to the original, it's 1915, and whatever. Okay, you can jump around timelines. Very disappointing. And I love Dan Jurgens as a writer, so I was surprised about that one. Another one I want to talk about is Tom King's story, and this is a close second for me as far as art. I know you like the Mariko, the art in the Mariko Tamaki story, but Walt Simonson in Legacy with Tom King, which is probably the best Tom King Batman comic he's written in quite a while. Probably since the 12 Angry Men story right after issue 50. And it's basically the story about how Batman dies, and he's fighting this guy. I think his name is Dr. Photon, and it's bouncing back and forth between Bruce being on his deathbed, dying of cancer, and this Dr. Photon letting him know his legacy is going to be he's the man that killed Batman by radiating him, and eventually he died of cancer. Whatever. The art in here is really cool. But the standout feature is actually the lettering from John Workman. You can tell he did all the letters by hand. And it looked cool. I enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, it was a good story. I liked the yin and yang of Batman and Dr. Photon, because the whole time Photon's like, my legacy will be you dying of cancer. Like, years from now, it won't be all these different villains you fight. It'll be me in the end when you're old and you die of cancer and your body can't fight anymore. And then Batman being like, well, I don't care about any of that. I'm just trying to save you. I like that. Again, it wasn't the best story. It was like a little better than the mediocre stories we got in this book. But considering what we've gotten from King, it wasn't that bad. It was all right, and the art was really good for the most part. Besides the old Bruce smiling did not look good to me.
Was on the bed was creepy.
Yeah, he's like it looked really weird.
It had like the Joker smile from the movies. Like,
yeah, see, and I was like, that shouldn't have had him do that. Besides that, yeah, it looked really good, especially the action. Like, the action looked great, and yeah, it was pretty good for Tom King. It was a pretty good story watching him die with Catman.
I wish Walt Simonson got a prolonged run on Batman. I think he would have knocked it out of the park. Would have been one of the great Batman artists of all time. But this is of note because we find out what villain killed Batman. Dr. Photon via cancer in the bedroom.
Yeah, it's a good way to go. Dies of cancer with Catwoman. That's a good way to go for Batman.
So we'll get to the last one. And it's interesting because everyone tells me that Brian Michael Bendis' Batman universe was really good. And that I should go check it out, because that's the character for Brian Michael Bendis in DC Comics. He gets a story in here. It's illustrated by David Marquez. It's not like the best illustrated comic, but it's very good. It's very enjoyable. But and the premise of the story is interesting. There's a dead body. I think it's Robin. Damian Wayne shows up. The next thing Nightwing's there, and then the entire Bat family just coincidentally show up around this body. They're trying to figure out, is it a trap? Who is this guy? And they're all investigating it together, which sounds really cool. We like the Bat family. I like seeing the interaction. But it turns out maybe Bendis can write Batman in a Batman comic, but he cannot write Nightwing, Red Robin, Spoiler, Batgirl, or for who else is in this? Or he cannot write all these characters together. It was so pretentious. It was so stupid. If he was the writer of the Bat family, I would hate every single one of them.
Dude, this was terrible. Like I said, the art was good. I like Dave Marquez. He does a good job on Superman, Batman, Superman. I think he's off that book now, though. But he did a good job on that. And, man, there's just so many word bubbles. Like, there's so much talking in this book. I like the premise. Like, the premise is good. It's a cool idea of all the Bat family, happened to behind this one murder, and now they got to try to figure it out. It's, cool, especially because we don't see the entire Bat family together that much. So this was a cool idea, but then they start talking, and that's where everything goes downhill from there, and it's just the worst. They all sound the same, and then a guy has been straight up murdered, and Spoiler and Batgirl are hugging, oh hey girl, haven't seen you in a while. It's
long time no see.
One right there. You guys have no clue why or what happened, but you're hugging. It just felt so tasteless. It was so weird. And then Red Hood has a legitimate concern, we're in a kill box. There's sky rises all around us. We could the entire Bat family could get murdered right now because of where we're at. And everyone else is nah. What? Red Hood has an actual concern. You guys could all die. It's so weird, Bendis quirky style humor, and it didn't fit for this book at all.
It was bad, and that's one of the overall general criticisms about this book. Almost every one of the stories feels too long.
Yeah.
For an anthology book. But this Brian Michael Bendis, the masterclass story within this. It felt like it was 45 pages. It felt so long.
It legitimately will take you longer to read this than like a standard like 22, 24 page comic. Like reading just this one like 10-page story. Like it's so long. There's so much talking. Like every single panel has a minimum of like 10-word balloons. It's Bendis too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're talking about the panel. You're not talking about the page.
Yeah, not the page. Yeah.
I was like, what are you talking? This was way more dialogue, but it's a lot. And there's also some really weird stuff. Like obviously this detective who they by the end they determine he's kind of dirty or whatever, and then they figure it out by the end, obviously. And then Batman's like, well, good job, guys. No harm, no foul on this one. And it's like, the dude's still dead, isn't he? Like, what do you mean nobody got hurt? Like, he's dead.
Also, the weird thing is, like, I'm scrolling through it right now, and like he's like all bloodied up, but they say that he like died of a heart attack when he saw Killer Croc. Yeah. So it's like, why is there like just blood pouring out of his mouth? It was just like a heart attack. What? Yeah. Like that doesn't make world's greatest detectives, like all of them right there. You know, the best detectives are like, oh, we'll believe you, Killer Croc. You didn't kill that guy on purpose. You just scared him, and that's why he's bleeding. It doesn't. Its story's just bad.
Yeah, there's some other bad stories, but to me, this is easily the worst. Honestly, it was a chore getting through this comic. Once I got through this, and I think this is the second story in the comic book. It's the second or third. Like, I didn't want to read it anymore. I was like, if they're, you know, because it was so hard to get through. I'm kind of glad I did. Obviously, there's some better stories later on, but there's a lot of mediocre material in this comic book. I was not impressed. I personally don't recommend this because, like I said, there's only 2 or 3 stories, and they're like 30 or 40 pages total that are really good in this. And it's like a $10 comic book, and there's so much mediocre to Bendis that you have to wade through just to get to it. I was really disappointed.
I was too, because like I've been a big proponent of like the DC anniversary issues. Like they've done a good job with what was it, Flash 750, Detective Comics 1000, Action Comics 1000. Like they've done a really good job so far. The Green Lantern anniversaries as well. I'd say all those are worth it. Like all those are really good. And so I was expecting something good from this, and then they get like a lot of random people that aren't known for Batman at all. And then like the stories are just so mediocre and just nothing special. It's definitely not worth spending your money on this. I would not recommend it.
Nah, I would go buy Detective Comics 1000 if you haven't already. That one's better.
It's much better.
And like I said, a little bit disappointed. There are a couple of gems in here. Matt Fraction, who would have done it? Not my favorite writer. Definitely knocked it out of the park. He's got the standout story. Very enjoyable, but I don't know. There you go, folks. I don't recommend Detective Comics 1027. Sounds like Dylan, you're in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
This is like a 2-star comic book.
Basically.
Overall.
Definitely. Like you can't be doing this when you're asking people to spend $10 on a comic book. Like this is just dumb.
It did have some great covers, and it would certainly had a premium product as far as the pages and everything. It's just the interior work and in the stories that didn't really hold up. Dylan, I want to say thank you for joining the channel today. If you haven't subscribed to his YouTube channel, there is a link in the video description, and there should be an icon up on the screen right now. Probably has his face. It says The Real Comic Book Gamer. You select that. You can go subscribe to his channel if you haven't. I imagine if you like comic books and you've subscribed to my channel, you probably already subscribed to his anyway. He has a lot more fans than I do.
Appreciate it.